Welcome to Sincast, presented by Cinemasins.
Welcome to the Sincast, everybody. This is Chris Atkinson from Cinemasins, joined again by the voice of Cinemasins, Jeremy Scott.
Howdy, hi.
And music video sins writers Barrett Scher and Jay Lalonde, making this a four-way between Nashville, Chicago, and New York.
That would be a three. Well, it's four people.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, welcome to the Sincast. But we're going to start off with some sort of rant.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. We're dicks.
Lord Jesus! Lord Jesus!
Does anybody have anything to rant about today?
Yes, I do. And people are going to know that I told you ahead of time that I wanted to rant about this, but we're actually going to try and do like a what do you want to rant about segment like every episode.
Right.
And this week I'm taking it, and I want to rant about MacGyver. Because they've announced a new television show based on a young MacGyver, and a new film based on, I guess, the regular MacGyver. And it's one of those times where I almost made a video to rant about it, because just like I reached critical mass with the Disney live action announcements where they're going to remake all their goddamn animated movies. I have the same kind of feeling right now, because we're just raping the 80s creatively and giving the finger to originality. And it really depresses me. And you guys don't agree. Well, I mean, it's been 80s and 90s things remade, RoboCop, Total Recall. I mean, Hollywood's been remaking and sequeling for a really long time, but I don't think that takes away from the fact that they're doing it at an increased rate now. Like, the problem is getting worse. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I just watched the Point Break original movie last night, and I was wondering to myself as I'm watching it, how high were people to come up with the idea to remake this?
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and they're going to make a new Zorro, right? Alfonso Cuarón's son is going to make like a futuristic set Zorro. It's just everywhere you look, every single day, there are multiple headlines about something being rebooted or remade.
That's the thing. I don't think they're high, though, Barrett. I think they're very sober. They're just seeing money, and money. That's it.
Well, those Disney live-action remakes make bank.
I blame the Fonz on this. I don't know if you guys know this, but Henry Winkler is the executive producer of MacGyver, the TV series. So it goes all the way back to the Fonz. All right, it's the Fonz's fault for this. So
well, ultimately, what it comes down to, right, is somebody owns a recognizable property, and it doesn't take much time to develop that.
Right.
And you say, all right, well, we've got all the basics in place here. Let's just reboot this and try to make it. But now sometimes they can do a good job and reboot something, and it's something completely original. They did that with Battlestar Galactica, which was of course you had the cheesy '70s series, and then it became a much more complex type of thing. I think a lot of times people look at success stories like that and say, we can do that with anything, and everybody still remembers MacGyver, so we can make this into something just as good as that. Who knows if they will? Most of the time they don't. That's the problem.
Well, you're right. I think it's from a financial and creative standpoint, it's about spending as little money and time to develop a property as possible. Like, Disney's like, okay, we already own all this stuff. We already know what the story of Cinderella is. We already know what the story of Alice in Wonderland is. Let's make this lavish production of a mediocre film that will make $300 million to justify even more of them and sequels of them. And it's just, I don't think they want to pay for other properties or to adapt other books or to pay the writers to come up with something creative, because it takes longer to get something like that right on the page. Yeah.
And it's about leveraging your existing properties. It is really annoying. And I guess it's one of those things where they think, well, the today's kids don't know anything about that, so it'll seem new to them. And we'll just go from there and not worry about all the 40-year-olds out there that remember this type of stuff, because we're going after the 18 to 25 market.
Well, and the other thing that they're doing a lot more of is this like cinematic universe thing, and goes well beyond Marvel and DC, because Universal's developing their like Mummy, monster, shared universe films. They're doing the King Kong, Skull Island that's going to eventually match up with somehow Godzilla. And so even though some of that is original, at least in terms of story, we're still going to be saturating the market with the same universes, the same characters, the same probably score and directors. And the same problem I have with the Marvel films is they all feel like the same exact thing. They all sound exactly alike. There's not much differentiation, and we're just going to get more and more of that from all the studios.
Do you guys think there's a place where MacGyver could actually work? Like, I remember it being on TV, and I remember I actually knew it was horrible, but I still watched it. I binge watched what I could in those days, Sure. Well, I watched it regularly. I was a big fan, and I know it certainly didn't age very well, but MacGyver's been happening for 3 decades since it went off the air. It shows up in variations, like Tony Shalhoub has the germ weirdness, or there's always some kind of show with some kind of supernatural genius who can see things or crime scenes other people can't, or what have you. That's been going on, I think, from just a core framework of a story ever since MacGyver, and maybe even before that.
Yeah, it's Sherlock Holmes is one of those where they sort of make it may not be Sherlock, but it's somebody named something else that has the properties of Sherlock, which actually will tie into our topic later on. But like House was a big Sherlock Holmes TV show. All right, so now that we're done ranting and everything, we're gonna talk about movies that we feel like have been way underseen, underrepresented, forgotten. That you just, for whatever reason, they never connected with audiences. And let's see, I guess Jeremy, go ahead and start with one of yours.
And so for me, I sort of define this kind of topic as movies that I enjoyed and enjoy, but almost never hear anybody else talk about, basically. And so the one I want to bring up first is Sneakers, which came out in 1992. We've used it a lot in outtakes on our Sins videos. Chris and I both love that movie. It's got a fantastic cast. Robert Redford, James Earl Jones, Sidney Poitier, River Phoenix, Dan Aykroyd, Stephen Tobolowsky, Mary McDonnell. It's just full of a young Donald Logue. And it's basically
David Strathairn.
Yeah, David Strathairn. So just to sort of maybe entice you to watch it if you haven't seen it, a brief summary. It's about a wacky group of security experts that basically get paid to break into places to test security. And one day some government guys come along and claim to know a secret about one of them's past, and promise to make it go away if they do a job for them. And I don't really want to say much more than that. It's really well written. All the performances are great. And I never think of this movie as a comedy. I always think of it, as a straight up heist adventure, but it's absolutely hilarious.
Ben Kingsley's in that.
Yeah, Ben Kingsley as well.
With an absurd ponytail.
Yes. Yes, he does.
To say much about Sneakers would be, if you haven't seen it, would be sort of you really do need to see this movie, because there's a lot of like little twists and turns in it. But you're absolutely right. It's hilarious. It's it's a thriller kind of, but it's got a lot of comedy elements in it. Like, it doesn't take itself too seriously.
Right. It's sort of like, I've sold it to people as like Ocean's 11 without the glitz and gloss and glamour. Because the Ocean's movies attempt to be very funny, and they don't always work for me. But Sneakers sort of perfected that a long time ago.
It holds up pretty well, despite the fact that it's using the best technology that 1992 has to offer. In terms of a message machine and everything, and things that have to do with that. But I watched it fairly recently, and it, even with the limitations of the technology and everything, it still could have taken place, been released within the last 5 years.
Right. That was my question, because I've never seen it, and sometimes you go back and watch these old movies and you just can't get past the technology of the time. Right. But you're saying it holds up.
It does, because it's not what works about the movie is the situations and the characters more than the tech gobbledygook, but also the tech that they're sort of dealing with, even though it would be in a different form today, the ramifications of it are still applicable.
Okay.
In fact, isn't it pretty much, I know you don't want to go too much into the plot, but it's very similar to what the MacGuffin is in Dark Knight Rises, right?
Yeah, I think so. It's not dissimilar. It's basically, financial global, pandemonium is the end game. And I don't think that gives away too much. Because, again, I don't think the movie's about that. I think the movie's about relationship between the two main characters.
Yeah. Now, does that really qualify as a MacGuffin, though? It seems that it has, more relevance to the plot than something like the one in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol did.
Right. I think it's much more important to the story than a standard MacGuffin, for sure.
But there is an aspect that is very important to Marty, to Robert Redford's character, though, right? To kind of to erase his past and things like that. Yeah.
It's that type of thing. That's the more important thing. But there's in Mission, like in Ghost Protocol, like what they do with that is it's a thing you don't know what it does, and they're chasing after it because they need to get it because it's going to save the world, and that's all you need to know about it. In this one, it's very clear what it does. In fact, it's got a great scene involving what it does. But and speaking of which, that also has one of the funniest jokes in it too. Though that one scene where you see what's happening, because Robert Redford and Mary McDonnell are both trying to figure out what this phrase means, and they're putting Scrabble letters together, and they keep coming up with all these different these different phrases from these letters and everything, and some of them sound okay and whatever, and then they come up with one that's just completely not right or whatever, and it's hilarious. But yeah, it's never ending fun. It starts right off the beginning. It's this big, huge, like impossible heist thing that only the very top professionals could ever do, and it wraps you up from that moment forward. It never once has a lull.
That's true, and it's funny in every scene. Like, it's funny even in that opening scene. They set the tone perfect with the first couple of minutes, and then bam, hit you with a pretty hilarious opening joke.
Was this River Phoenix's last movie?
I don't know if it was the last one he shot.
Not sure if it was his last. I think Thing Called Love was his last one. Which was shot right here in Nashville. Yes, and but I believe that was, if it wasn't the last, it was maybe the last before he died. He may have been shooting another one, and they put that out later. But
he's got good chemistry with everybody. He was so good.
Oh yeah, he's great in this too.
And you can see that the guy was going to be just a huge megastar.
Yeah.
If things had panned out. I often wonder how the movie landscape would be had River Phoenix not died. Yeah. How much did that affect Joaquin Phoenix's career, and how much did that affect other young up and coming stars like Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yeah, he was poised to be Leo back then. Like, he was on that trajectory.
Oh yeah, for sure. But obviously that's a movie you definitely need to go see. Barrett, do you have one?
Yeah, I've got one that may be too far out of left field. I was watching this yesterday and reminded me how much I liked it. It's actually a film from 1999, written and directed by Tim Robbins, called Cradle Will Rock.
Oh yeah,
and I don't hear anything about it. I don't hear about movie people that like it. I don't hear about theater people who like it. It's about the theater in the 1930s and the union movement and everything. And you go back and watch it, just the pacing, it's very theater centric in terms of the dialogue and how people interact and everything. And it's terrific. And almost what Jeremy was saying about the casting is insane.
Huge cast.
An enormous cast. Hank Azaria, John Cusack, Angus McFadden, who plays Orson Welles, who is really, really good as Orson Welles. Bill Murray, Turturro, Emily Watson, Jack Black, and Kyle Gass are the pupils.
Yeah, have a little cameo in
the
it.
Pupils of Bill Murray, and their scenes together are some of the funniest shit that I've seen in forever. But yeah, I thought that was a very underrated movie. Did you guys like it? Did you see it?
Yeah, I saw it. Not in the theater, but I think as soon as it came out on video back then. But I haven't seen it since.
Yeah, I saw it in the theater, and I don't know if it and I don't know if it's just that it didn't connect with me at the time. But I think, especially because I was a movie theater projectionist during that era, and I watched a lot of movies late at night. That was one of those that you just can't watch under those circumstances. It's long and it may be very entertaining, but it's just not the right movie when you're exhausted at the end of the day to watch. So that's where my own shortcomings of bringing that movie up to other people have come from.
Yeah, it's long and it's complicated.
But
it's almost like an Altman movie, but.
Yeah,
which isn't surprising, right? Because he made the player with Altman and probably picked up some of his habits.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and his other movie, Bob Roberts, is a lot like an Altman movie too. So he definitely has a lot of Altman influence when he directs.
Yeah, people should check it out though. It's very, especially if you're into theater, if you're into it's mostly based on a true story, at least in terms of the environment. And it's really interesting. You get to see some character actors. Paul Giamatti's in it. Bob Balaban's in it. Susan Sarandon, Vanessa Redgrave. I mean, it's a lot of broad theater actors and very serious character actors that are kind of allowed to be weird characters in this true story environment.
And Edward Norton's in that movie, right?
No, I don't think so.
Is he in that? Is he not? What movie am I thinking of?
Gosford Park? Because
there's something else that's kind of like that. That I can't put my finger on.
Are you talking about Birdman?
No.
I mean, they're both theater pieces. That's why that's.
No.
Let's figure it out.
No. Okay, because it shares the movie Frida shares a lot of characters.
Well, yeah, Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera are characters in this.
Right.
Uh-huh.
It shares a lot of characters with Frida. Yeah. So I remember Edward Norton in Frida and not in Cradle with Rock. So that's where that came from.
There's a good scene in here with John Cusack as Rockefeller, where he introduces himself to Frida Kahlo, and she just completely ignores him. And it's pretty funny.
Jay, do you have a movie?
Yeah, I'm waiting for a backlash from you guys on this one because I think most people give me shit on this, but
I can't wait.
But I really like Rock and Rolla, the Guy Ritchie film from when was it? Maybe 2008 or 2009 or so. An ensemble cast. I usually am not a fan of Gerard Butler movies, but I really, there's some clever stuff in this. And I mean, we got Idris Elba and Tom Hardy and Mark Strong. Thandie Newton is super sexy in it. There's a sex scene in there that lasts like 4 seconds, which is hilarious.
There you go.
I mean, even like Ludacris is in it, and I'm not a fan of Ludacris's acting abilities, but it's just all around a fun movie that has a mobby sort of action theme to it. They were supposed to make another one, and by they I mean Guy Ritchie, but I think he got caught up in the Sherlock enterprise, and so I think that's been the holdup. But I just thought it was an all around fun movie.
Well, I'll say this: I can't really lash back at you because I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it either.
It came out. I remember when it came out, and I actually really wanted to see it because I do like when Guy Ritchie goes to that world. Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels is a really great movie, and Snatch is a really great movie. and so I really wanted to see it. It was just one of those things that didn't show up at the theater I was working at the time, and I didn't go out of my way to go watch it. But I heard a lot of people actually say they liked it. So you might not be alone on that one.
Yeah, I just really like his work, even like back in the days when like BMW was asking Guy Ritchie to do those like short films.
Yeah, little Clive Owen things.
Yeah, those are so cool. And he definitely has his own style. And I don't know, like I think a lot of people get sucked into big blockbuster action films, but Guy Ritchie kind of has this like British indie vibe to what he does, and I don't know. Rock and Rolla just stood out to me in this particular conversation.
And you can sort of trace Matthew Vaughn from Guy Ritchie too, because Matthew Vaughn was a producer, I believe, on a couple of the early Ritchie movies.
Yeah, he directed Layer Cake.
Yeah, Layer Cake came out right around that time, and it was, it's sort of a British invasion of gangster movies.
Mm-hmm.
I will have to go check that out because I have heard a couple occasions people say that's a good movie.
I was just going to say that it's surprising to me that I haven't seen Barrett's movie in a long time, and I've never seen Jay's movie, and I'm going to come out of this with some stuff to watch and have fun.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, exactly. Mine is Zero Effect.
Ooh,
nice.
This movie came out in '98. It's and we were talking about Sherlock Holmes earlier. This is basically a modern Sherlock Holmes, but it's a little quirkier, especially since it came out in the '90s. Bill Pullman plays Daryl Zero, and Ben Stiller is basically his Watson in this. And it starts off with something very simple. Ryan O'Neal is this rich guy who comes to Zero. And says, I have lost my keys, Mr. Zero, and I need your help to find them. And so basically it's about missing keys. And then, of course, Zero finds out that it's way more, about way more than just keys. He's being blackmailed, and he didn't want to say anything. Ryan O'Neal's character didn't want to say anything about it. He keeps getting deeper and deeper into this mystery, and Kim Dickens is in it. It's one of her early roles. Kim Dickens is great in this movie. And he basically he just goes through his process and all that. It's really fun to watch. This is one of the few movies where narration is really fun. It's like one where it's like a couple of words about following somebody. First off, you need to make sure that they can't see you, and they can't, and then it's like, and be sure to get there before they do, that type of thing. But it's just one of those movies that the mystery is compelling. The all the different little quirks of Bill Pullman's performance, and unfortunately Pullman has been branded this bland actor, and that people confuse him because of his name with Bill Paxton, which doesn't make any sense. They're completely different actors. But this was Pullman's best performance I've ever seen him in. This is something that was really good. And nobody watched it, probably because Bill Pullman was in it. Even though Ben Stiller was, a decent draw around the time. He was, he had done There's Something About Mary and all that. So, but it's one of those movies where the mystery is great and there's a lot of humor to it, and I can't recommend it enough.
Bill Pullman looks straight up grizzled in the Independence Day 2 trailer.
Yeah,
he looks like he's really been through it. Like it's been a pretty rough road for him.
He had to go into hiding after that last Independence Day. He's been a hermit, probably.
Saving the Earth.
But Zero Effect was also written and directed by Jake Kasdan, who got, I guess he's best known for Maybe Walk Hard at this point. He's also the son of Lawrence Kasdan.
That's an underappreciated movie too, right? Walk Hard?
I think it is a little bit.
Yeah, it is. Although I think just like a lot of comedies that have come out over the years, it's gotten that huge following later on. I mean, there's a lot of people who talk about it now. I guess Kasdan also did Bad Teacher, which is not a good movie, but it might be his biggest hit. But yeah, that's another one. Walk Hard's another funny movie to watch. With Zero Effect, they actually tried to make a TV series out of it with Alan Cumming as Daryl Zero, and it never got off the ground. And that's probably another one of those things where it was like, well, it's Alan Cumming. Nobody cares. Even though Alan Cumming's a great actor.
Hurt Alan Cumming's mom's feelings.
I did because she's a rabid listener.
Unsubscribe.
Yeah, that's right. But that's a movie that I felt like, after I watched it, I said, I want to see more of this. And it just never took off. And then the TV series didn't take off. So it's one of those disappointments in life.
Well, we plan to make this, a topic we come back to in the future, since I think all of us probably have multiple movies we could draw for this discussion.
For
and
sure.
I'm going to just throw one more out there that I'm not sure if any of you have seen it. It's this supernatural romantic comedy called Heart and Souls with Robert Downey Jr. Anybody see this movie?
I haven't seen it. I remember when it came out. I never saw it.
It's got a crazy cast. It's got Tom Sizemore's in it, Elizabeth Shue's in it, David Paymer, Alfre Woodard, Keira Sedgwick, Charles Grodin. And essentially these people die in a car accident, and in the same accident, a baby is born. And for reasons they don't understand, their ghosts are attached to this baby for the rest of his life. And when he's an adult, this bus from heaven comes to take all the ghosts there. And that's when they find out they were supposed to use Robert Downey Jr.'s body to accomplish that big thing they would have done or preferred to do before they died. And so the rest of the movie is them trying to convince Robert Downey Jr. that they're real, and then convince him to let them use his body to fulfill their last request. It's really unique. I wouldn't call it a fantastic movie in the sense that it's like an A+, but I really enjoy it. I don't know why I picked it off the shelf in the video store, but I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk about this movie except me.
I just learned about it, and now I'm seeing Elizabeth Shue is in it, which I'll see anything she's in.
Yeah.
I just ever since Adventures of Babysitting, I'm the president of her fan club, guys. Yeah,
I completely understand that, and I also think Elizabeth Shue got better with age too.
Yeah.
Talking about her acting,
so she's both.
I made it through Piranha 3D with her in it. Okay, so
yeah, exactly.
Well, anyway, I would encourage you to check out Heart and Souls at some point. It's directed by a guy named Ron Underwood, who did at least one other movie that you've probably seen, City Slickers. And also directed Tremors. And so he had a little run there.
Another one, Tremors, is another one that you could really kind of talk about. Although I think it definitely got enough of a following because there's like 5 of them now.
I think it always had a cult following. They ran all of them on TV a couple weeks ago. I watched a couple of them. They're really fun, even though they're at times pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I just have one more that I think I've got a question about, because it is a cult movie, and I know all of us have seen it. I know all of us love it. At least Chris and Jeremy and I, is The Cable Guy. And I'm wondering, how beloved is that in the popular consciousness now?
It's come into
I absolutely think it's one of the greatest comedies I've ever seen.
It is. I think people talk about it a lot, though. I think it has a lot of fans now.
Okay.
When it came out, it didn't. It just confused people because no one was ready for that Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Well, and it confused the hell out of me. I was working at my first theater at the time when that came out. The movie's going to be 20 years old this summer. I remember it came out, and he had at that point had done, I believe, 5 movies, and all of them were manic Jim Carrey comedies. Batman Forever, even you could call manic Jim Carrey comedy.
Oh yeah.
this one was, Ben Stiller directing and Carey being dark. It was downright spooky the way he was acting, even though there was some humor in it. Your classic definition of a dark comedy movie. And I even remember Ben Stiller saying something about, like, do you want to be the guy who's behind the director's chair when Jim Carrey finally doesn't make a movie that makes $100 million at the box office? He even knew it wasn't going to do very well. Right. And it was hard. It was very hard to figure out whether I should laugh or should I be scared. And then once you finally kind of like come to terms with both, you can really enjoy the movie.
Yeah, and that's Ben Stiller directed too. And like two of my all-time favorite comedies are Ben Stiller directed, Tropic Thunder being the other one.
Yeah.
But I don't think that would
one of
count
the funniest
as
things in there too.
What's that?
His cameo is one of the funnier things in the movie too. The Stan and Stan Sweet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, basically the Menendez brothers parody. Yeah, exactly. Which is we've actually done that as an outtake before too. I think it was an Asian gang or something.
I don't think the Cable Guy counts as a forgotten movie, but if you're listening and you haven't seen it, please watch it. It's up there with all these movies we're talking about in terms of quality.
Well, and Jim Carrey, the other thing about Jim Carrey, I remember The Simpsons back in the 90s. There was some sort of episode, it might have been the Lisa's wedding episode, where they go in the future and Lisa talks about how he's considered a legend in like 2035 or whatever it is. And at the time, Jim Carrey was basically just considered your average dumb comedy guy. I think time has probably been pretty kind to the Carrey movies. And you can look back on some of these dumb comedies, quote unquote, as classics.
Yeah, well, one of my all-time favorites is Liar Liar. I think that's peak Jim Carrey.
Yeah. That's a movie I used to watch all the time on break.
Chris and I talk about this all the time when we worked at theaters. One of the funnest things to do is when a movie's really good is to pop in the back and take in the audience reaction to the really funny moments. And that movie, I went in maybe every showing to see how people would react to like the outtakes and the funniest bits.
Question.
Everybody, I have a question.
Just one more thing.
I want the truth.
I know more than you.
Cool. So I've got a couple questions here that I've seen that I like that I think might be fun discussion. The first one was, what are some of our personal favorite action sequences? And my immediate answer to this question is in Lost World Jurassic Park, the trailer and the cliff T-Rex attack. I think it's classic Spielberg action and tension staging, where this guy's running all over the place trying to save their lives and everything keeps going wrong. It's one of my very, very favorite action sequences.
I have quite a few that I stop everything I'm doing if it's on. But the first one that came to mind when I heard this question was the beginning of Hard Boiled, the John Woo movie with Chow Yun-fat. The opening scene it's like at a tea house is like 20-25 minutes or something like that, and each action scene in this is just like epic. And it's just a Chow Yun-fat blowing a whole bunch of guys, blowing a whole bunch of guys. There you go. Blowing a bunch of guys away. Hey, blowing a bunch of guys away in the tea house. And like it, culminates in this like little slow motion down the staircase slide that Chow Yun-fat does, blowing away guys on the staircase, sliding down it. It's exactly what you want in an action movie, and Woo doesn't go to crazy, confusing editing and all that. It's very stylish and just wraps you up. And if you haven't even seen Hard Boiled, that's an action movie to watch right there.
Yeah, it's before he got like super excessive with all of the tricks that we've come to know his later action films.
Well, and that was when he got over to America. I feel like when you go to America, like Americans are like, well, we like you for this, do this, do a lot of that. And that, you know, that was his Hong Kong stuff right there. And almost every action scene is ridiculous, epic type stuff in there. I could name 2 others in there that are great too. But what about you guys?
I was thinking in a similar vein. I just saw this a few months ago, the Raid 2. And really, any of those fight sequences
so
can be on this list, but the one in the prison yard in the mud telegraphs it from the beginning, but you just don't know what's going to be the strike of the match to light it up. And once it does, it just descends into this absolute, just this mess. And
that movie plays on Stars pretty frequently, and I always watch it. Always.
Yeah, each section of it, each independent portion of it is so planned out. You know, even then the background and everything, it's just so easy to watch multiple times.
Well, it's so kinetic too. The camera is at their leg level basically, and it sits there and just trains on them. It doesn't. It's moving, but it's not like jerking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so involving. And if you ever, you look at a bad action scene, there's a reason why we put the sins in our videos about these. You can't see what's going on and everything. Compare an action scene like the Raid 2, like you're talking about in the prison yard, to any Michael Bay random action scene. Editing takes so much out of an action scene. It blinds you to death with, wow, this is exciting because it's cutting rapidly.
I would even probably go to the car chase scene in the Raid 2 to point out how immersive the camera work is, and this that one long take where you're inside and out of like 2 different cars while fights and wrecks are going on all around you, and it doesn't cut through that whole shot.
Yeah. And it also, since we're we're on basically a lot of Asian cinema here, it reminds you of Ong Bak, where Ong Bak's got that big, huge, you run up the spiral building thing or whatever. It's nuts. And you're like, how long does it take to do that?
Yeah, they really know how to do it there. I mean, you could even go all the way back to like Bruce Lee films, like basically Enter the Dragon, just pick any moment in there. Even when he's just being philosophical about martial arts, it's like there's some beautiful moments. But I was going to say, actually, all the opening scenes to Daniel Craig Bond movies, except for Spectre, which I just watched recently, and it's just a giant turd. But Skyfall, Quantum of Solace, Casino Royale, like all great opening action scenes. But I gotta Spectre's so bad. Man, it was bad.
Yeah.
Casino Royale in particular, that was a great opening scene.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's my favorite one out of that 4 that Craig did was that opening scene.
Yeah.
I also want to bring up, sorry, I think I just stepped on someone, but the train scene in The Untouchables, where they go to the train station to get the bookkeeper and the baby carriage just going down the stairs. And I mean, that's obviously classic, like De Palma film in my book, and another one I watch anytime it comes on. But that scene in particular, it never fails to make me anxious.
Oh, it's so good. The Untouchables, if you know the movie really, really well, and I think both Jeremy and I do, and you start watching it just, I guess, sort of despite the story, and just watch what De Palma does with it the entire time. The guy is just on another level in that movie. Everything in there is just so well done. No scene was wasted in that movie. And it's just, it's oh my God. Yeah. That sequence, and the sequence where he's going after the gangster on the roof, and and the bridge sequence and all that stuff is great.
Yeah, it's a fantastic film. If you haven't seen that one, get on it.
Well, and and I was actually going to bring up yet another De Palma Mission Impossible, which is the the infiltration of CIA headquarters.
Oh yeah.
Is just so. I mean, you're talking about tense. You have that same thing that Spielberg did with Lost World, which came only a year after. There's so much involved. It's not just the fact that he could get caught. There's so many different things that he could do to get caught, like the sweat dripping down his face, and just the slightest bit of noise and all that, even though I still don't like the fact that there's a mouse running around in the air conditioning system. But still, I mean, there's so many different obstacles to him succeeding in that, and there's no sound or anything. It's so tense.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite scenes in any of the Mission Impossible movies, for sure. I totally agree. All right, this one might be fun. What's your favorite George Clooney performance? And I will let somebody else go first this time.
ER.
ER.
Michael Clayton. Michael Clayton.
It is Michael Clayton for me.
Yeah,
as
that's
well.
a good one.
I mean, this is so pretentious, but if you've ever seen just the script by itself, just the script is it's world class. Some of the best writing, I think. And then he's just great in it. He plays very George Clooney-ish, but actually, I take it back. I'm going to go back to ER. Actually, ER wins.
It's Michael Clayton? That's Tony Gilroy, right? Yeah. And his brother, I think it's Dan Gilroy, is also really good. Nightcrawler.
Nice.
Yeah. So anything with their name on it, I'm all about it. The performance I like the best is probably "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?"
Another good one.
He's so funny in that. He's just consistently funny throughout the entire movie, and just the way he's talking, it's got that air of I'm smarter than you, but he's very dumb. Honestly.
It's amazing.
Just that part where he's like trying to get his Dapper Dan at the store, it kills me every single time. And he keeps asking the guys like, it's about a week away. And he's like, well, isn't this a geographical oddity? A week away from everywhere, that type of thing. He's just constantly entertaining in that. That's my favorite.
Yeah, he went against type in that role, or against previous type, and really balanced his humorous side with some sort of serious, and that rapid fire dialogue, which I guess is a function of the writing too. But God, that whole movie was just blew you away with how different it was. Yeah, I've never seen a movie like that in that sort of context. Making, what was it, the Odyssey?
It was based
in the plantations of Mississippi. It was just odd, but it was beautiful. Yeah. I've probably seen that movie more times than anything. Clooney balancing humor with pathos, though, is my favorite. Is Up in the Air.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Really grounds that performance, but he's got that kind of humorous tilt to it.
Mm-hmm.
That one's it's understated, but it's a really good performance. I think he went back to the well to try to do it again for, what was it, The Descendants?
I love that movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was as authentic as what he did with Up in the Air, but I think that's where he kind of opened that whole side of him, though.
Well, Up in the Air punched me in the gut, man.
Yeah.
Hey, you're thinking about that scene where he goes to Chicago with Vera Farmiga is just devastating.
It really is, and he's earned it the whole way up to that.
Yeah, for sure.
I like Up in the Air. I really like The Descendants. My pick is going to be Michael Clayton for best performance because I just didn't know anything about that movie when I saw it, and it was a really great film. But my favorite Clooney movie is Out of Sight, and we'll talk about that for a whole episode someday in the future.
We're really teasing that hard, the Out of Sight podcast.
Because I have a lot of praise to heap on that movie. I really do. It's one of my all-time favorites. Another one that I thought might be fun for all four of us to answer is what's your favorite part about being involved with the Sins videos or making them?
For me, it's I guess it's coming up with that one observation and saying it just the right way, making a really good joke. I mean, a lot of our observations are just observations. That's exactly what they are. It's hey, why did this happen and whatever and so forth. But whenever you can come up with a creative way to say that thing, that's my favorite part of it. Is when you're in the middle of a script and you can write and you're writing a bunch of daffy stuff. That is the most fun for me.
I agree. It's really fun. I'd say I don't think it happens super often, but when you write one of those jokes that you just know is perfect, like you worded it perfectly. There's no funnier way in your brain to phrase what you've just written. And it's only happened a few times for me, and I think I've either emailed or called Chris to tell him about them because I was so proud of the jokes. But it's a really good, like in the Star Wars A New Hope video when Han shoots the radio, and I wasn't even thinking. I just wrote, "I'm surprised that radio didn't shoot Han first," and I looked at it and I went, "Wow, I don't have to edit that at all. That's exactly as it should be."
Yeah.
And it's a really great feeling if you're somebody who likes to write. It's a really great feeling.
Well, and you also did that one in San Andreas that I really like too, which is the objects in mirror are more divorced than they appear. This was really very outstanding.
I can't not laugh about it. That's really funny to me.
Yeah, and that's what I think. That's what we're talking about here. Is whenever we come up with something like that, where we're not saying anything that's wrong with the movie necessarily, although it's just something that pops up. Like we can go back and find what the derivative of that is, and that is, the director wanted to have some sort of cool shot with the mirror and everything. So at first you're like, stupid directors always trying to find cool shots in mirrors, and stuff like that. And then you come up with that. That's what you really want to say about it. You don't have anything like really good to say about it. So you come up with a joke that encompasses, that same observation or whatever. If that makes any sense at all.
Jay Barrett, assuming you guys enjoy working on the Sins videos, what's your favorite part?
I actually just like the process in general, and I also I was a stand-up for a long time, so like it's nice to not have to go play a Chuckle Hut every weekend, like because that can get old. But the other thing about it is that like music videos, I think, died out for a long time after TRL went away, and YouTube has really offered artists a place where they can continue to connect with their fans. And in a way, we get to do the same thing and really kind of more or less grow a fan base in a channel that understands what they're getting, and we get to kind of take the piss out of these really silly, like short movies is really what they end up being. And there's actually really good music videos out there. And I feel like as someone who grew up in the 80s and really enjoyed music videos, I actually feel more reconnected with music and music videos in general now that we've created this channel. And even if we're making fun of these music videos, it's actually pretty cool to watch.
Yeah, I like diving into the minutia of the current culture because otherwise we wouldn't really be exposed to the Biebers and the One Directions and the Selena Gomez's and the Ariana Grandes. But it definitely helps to connect us. Yeah, I like what Jay said. It is a almost a whole new medium. Certainly a different way to access it. You used to have to make sure that you were tuned into the right 120 minutes segment on MTV on Sunday nights or whenever it was. And you'd have to wait until that video came on. And then if you didn't know who it was, you'd have to wait until the end of the video to figure out who it was and, what album it was on and everything. And now it's a lot more immediate and a lot easier to access. I like it. Did you see that Portlandia sketch where he gets all the old MTV VJs and storms MTV to take over and return videos?
No, that's so funny though. Oh my God, I got to see that.
It's pretty funny. Not everybody likes that show, but I find it very entertaining.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like Portlandia a lot. Anytime that I get a chance to watch it, it's on. It's usually pretty amusing to me. You know what? By the way, when you asked this question last night, I did see one that was curious. I think there's, I don't know if it's that terribly oddball, but they asked why we're trying to come up with more scientific accuracy. Is it because we're trying to impress Neil deGrasse Tyson?
I saw that one.
And I thought that was hilarious because I mean no. I guess that's a good answer. I mean, I don't pretend to believe that Neil deGrasse Tyson is sitting here watching our videos all the time. Although
I hope he's using his time better.
I don't know. How great would it be? He's like at the Hayden Planetarium and he's just like, you know what? Fuck this science. I'm going to watch some cinema.
Well, it's funny. We actually got to meet him. We had 2 videos with him and had never gotten to meet him. But then he came to Nashville with his show, and we got to meet him backstage for like 10 minutes, and it was awesome.
Yeah, it was.
And he said that his daughter was the one who brought it to his brought Cinemasins to his attention, and so like and then later on when we went through our channels to ask and everything, he was game to do it. The thing that I worry about Neil deGrasse Tyson is when we come up with something that's completely wrong,
Right.
and we publish it on our video, and stuff like that. I don't worry about it too much, but I think we've always tried to be right about our science when we try to do these things. We're not always successful, but no, I mean, to do it because we're trying to impress him. No.
Wait, is there someone really mistaking us for scientists though? Like, is that like, like
I hope
you
not.
know you're
There's
watching
people mistaking us as reviewers.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like even people who know what I do will say, "What's your next review?" And I don't even bother to go through the whole, this is not a review type of thing. But I just go ahead and tell them, "Hey, we're doing Kung Fu Panda this week," or whatever. But yeah, I've never really gotten that. I feel like a review is a way more thoughtful. Like you're not nitpicking. You're writing something that's more serious about where this movie is in place of, in movie history and whatnot.
There was like a poll a year or so ago of the top YouTube movie reviewers, and we were like high on the list.
Oh yeah, and I also I feel like if we were truly reviewers, we would try to watch movies before they come out, and we're telling the public what we think of a movie that is currently out. This is a lot more freeform, where we're doing stuff that's usually been out way longer than probably 6
Right.
months, and I've never looked at these as reviews. I've always looked at them as basically a character who is had it with movies, and he is coming up with everything that irritates him as it comes along, and so that's the way I've always thought about these videos.
And it's compulsive for him. He can't help himself. He's gone
That's
off the
right,
deep end.
and that's why he throws in stuff that isn't really a criticism of the movie. But I remember early on, these videos would get accused of being all about continuity, which is I think is hilarious because there were a lot more continuity things in the early videos, but it wasn't the majority of them. I never understood that, but we did that at first, and then we just found out it was more fun to not really deal with continuity as much as just the plot and the situation and all that.
I also get a little bit of you guys just do much more joke sins now than you used to, and I always know those criticisms come from people who were not paying attention in the beginning.
Right.
Because the percentage of jokes to legitimate gripes about the movie has always been pretty relatively the same. And we actually work pretty hard to not do too much joke sins, but always have some of them.
Right. Yeah, like anytime a script seems too jokey, we try to cut it down, and it's sometimes hard to explain what this really is and everything. It's I think that the observations that we make are not necessarily things that on the whole you should grade the whole movie on. But they are things, and this is why it's so hard to talk about these things, because it makes it sound like we're being serious on everything, but we're not joking on everything either. We try to strike a balance on it. But
a good example is the skip joke, right? Because on the surface,
Right.
it seems like it's just a one-off throwaway joke, but in almost every instance of it, we're really saying this stuff on screen right here is so bad, I don't even want to spend time talking about it. Let's move on.
Right. And so yeah, like I think there are very real observations. Like there are anytime we do a script, I want to have at least 6 to 10 like legitimate like big moment gripes in it. Like if you were to do a movie review, you would mention these things
Right.
probably. And then all the other stuff is, would people really do this? Why would, in real life? And that's completely unfair to a movie that's just being creative. But at the same time, when you dabble in this kind of, you're in this kind of field, we're trying to be unfair for entertainment purposes, basically. And a lot of people will get that, and a lot of people won't. And they're like, you're just being unfair to the movie. Screw you. But, I've never been able to figure out what we really are. Like, you can't just call us a review. That's the thing. You can't call us a review, and you can't call us whatever else. There's no real good label for it.
Yeah, we're a mix of assholery and comedy.
Yeah, exactly. Emphasis on the assholery.
I watched that movie last night. Emphasis on the assholery.
Oh, it's
Oh, yeah. Very highbrow, though.
Steven Seagal's great in it, though.
He really is.
Oh, he is. He's made a
An
comeback.
real understated performance.
I think he figured out that, after all these years of ass kicking and everything, he needed to show a different side of himself.
Well, that's why he emphasized the assholery instead of kicking the ass. He wanted to explore the ass.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to check out Cinemasins on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Tumblr. And be sure to visit cinemasins.com.
Yeah. MacGyver.